Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu fired his defense minister over the weekend for objecting to his plan to overhaul the court system, something that the prime minister seeks to do so that he can hopefully evade pending corruption charges against him. But the defense minister didn't object for ethical reasons. He simply knew Netanyahu's plan to overhaul the courts threatened Israel's stability. Yes, that's right. There are people pushing back, and some are, operating with the best of intentions, and the others simply realize it wouldn't happen. But of course, there are people out there who just aren't having it either way, and that's the nearly 1 million Israelis who took to the streets in protest, and we have some footage here. Yeah, that's right. Over the last few days, Israelis have been using their voice to challenge this religious nationalist government there in Israel, and there are many there who see what's going on with Netanyahu and really see this as an attempted power grab as he's trying to reshape Israeli society in a way that's going to disadvantage them, that is going to uplift individuals who are looking more for that nationalistic Israeli take, as opposed to maybe bringing people together and also not using their power to completely and totally upend the court system. Here's more about the overhaul of the courts per CNN. At its core, the judicial overhaul would give the Israeli parliament, the Knesset, and therefore the parties in power more control over Israel's judiciary. From how judges are selected to what laws the Supreme Court can rule on, to even giving parliament power to overturn Supreme Court decisions. The changes would be the most significant shakeups to Israel's judiciary since its founding in 1948. Another significant element of the changes is known as the override clause, which would give the Israeli parliament the power to pass laws previously ruled invalid by the court, essentially overriding Supreme Court decisions. The thing a lot of people don't realize about Israel is that it does not have a constitution like the United States at all. So there aren't things mapped out in terms of true separation of powers, which is what is putting Netanyahu in a position where he can potentially upend the entire court system and the judiciary, so he will have more power and pretty much looking to evade conviction since he's facing those corruption charges. Well, another change that benefits Netanyahu in his attempted move is another bill now voted through makes it more difficult for a sitting prime minister to be declared unfit for office, restricting the reasons to physically or mentally incapacity and requiring either the prime minister themselves or 2/3 of the cabinet to vote for such a declaration. There is a lot going on there in Israel, and it is quite complicated. But the thing that is a very basic, clear reality is the fact that we have someone who is operating similar to Trump, tried to take over the court so they could avoid facing any kind of consequences for their actions. And the thing is, when it comes to Israel, however, it's not just the Israeli people that are throwing their weight behind opposing Netanyahu's right-wing transition. This Israeli journalist and activist, Haggai Matar, breaks it down.
The army is basically collapsing. The central and most important units that sustain Israel's Air Force and intelligence corps are basically filled with thousands of people who are saying that they will refuse to continue service or their reserve service if the legal overhaul goes through.
Right. Their military is not about it. Law enforcement has pulled back. They are not going to support this overhaul of the government. They are highly, highly unionized in Israel, big on unions, and they shut down the airport. We saw in France where individuals shut down in terms of the garbage disposal, trash maintenance. That is pretty much what was going on in Israel, of course, until recently, which we will have the updates. But I want to pause right now and get the temperature from you, Jordan. What's your outlook?
This is yet another example of why the US should reevaluate its alliance with Israel. The US in its foreign policy always claims to prioritize democracy, the rights of the individual, the rights of people, and purportedly, supporting democracy around the world. And time again, throughout all these different countries, our allies have shown they are anything but democratic. Typically, our alliances around the world are for militaristic reasons. And criticism of our alliance with Israel or how the Israeli government operates, specifically in relation to Palestinians and them being deprived of their rights and autonomy, has been dismissed or framed as anti-Semitic, and that is untrue. So what we need to do here is take a serious look at our relationship and alliance with Israel, because what they're showing is they don't really have, this current government does not truly value democracy in their society. And we've seen that in how they treat Palestinians and how this current government is operating. Unfortunately, the influence that the Israeli lobby has here, it's very similar and analogous to how the NRA operates. They have, bought the support of a ton of politicians throughout both parties in supporting Israel unilaterally. And again, it all comes back to the money in politics. AIPAC is a hugely influential bipartisan force in American politics. And until we do something about it, you're going to have people who just act like we have to be deferential to whatever the Israeli government does, no matter who it harms.
And the thing is that our society is not necessarily backing down or pushing back in terms of Israel and getting them to act right, particularly as it concerns the Palestinians. As I mentioned, the lack of a constitution. The thing is that when Israel was declared and created in 1948, it said it was going to develop a constitution so it could set up the separation of powers and prevent things like we're seeing with Netanyahu. Unfortunately, as I understand it, they did not do that at that point in time, in part because they didn't want to have to limit the state's power such that they would have to treat everyone in an equitable way, and it would have made them harder of a situation for them to carry out the settler colonial project that they have going in Palestine. That is, as many people have noted, a human rights violation, and that continues to persist with the apartheid actions there. And the thing is that those individuals taking to the streets aren't necessarily objecting to the treatment and the rights for Palestinians in any way. It's the concerns of what Netanyahu would do that would upend what they have going that would benefit them. It is a very powerful thing, but we do have to note that that judicial overhaul was just paused because it's a matter of now recognizing that Netanyahu cannot get away with it.